All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, we have to understand that we are living in a system where they feel like they can say our death is an accident and nobody has to pay for it. Like if you just drop and break your phone, it was an accident. But that's how it's always been. To them, our lives are nothing but politics. That's why we have to understand that we are the only ones that can get us out of this situation. And if we don't take action, then nobody is going to stop it. Because nobody else cares if it's man, woman, or child. To them, our lives really don't mean anything. But it has to mean something to us. It has to mean enough for us to want to defend it. We cannot keep taking casualties. And as men, we can't let somebody else come in our community and harm our women, our children, our elderly. And we can't let them come in and harm us. And we definitely cannot be afraid. Because at the end of the day, what is there to be afraid of? I'm more afraid to not do something and this keep happening for hundreds of more years. If something happens to the dominant society they label a threat, then they're going to take immediate action. But after our blood continues to be shed for hundreds of years, all we do is cry, pray about it, and march. In Texas, another sister, Diamond Ross, died while she was in custody of Dallas police. Now let's see how this sister ended up dying while in police custody.
Dallas family has a lot of questions today after their loved one died in police custody. It happened more than a year ago, but it only became public yesterday when Dallas police released dash and body camera video. Jack Fink live for us right outside DPD headquarters with more on the interesting timing.
Well, Doug, Dallas police say they want to be transparent. The woman's mother says she and her family recently made peace with her death when suddenly they got a call from a detective yesterday saying information and videos about this case were coming out.
I've been going on a year now not knowing anything about this.
Ethelyn Ross says only after watching 3 videos Dallas police suddenly released yesterday did she learn the department scrutinized police officers' actions before her daughter, 35-year-old Diamond Ross, died in their custody in August of last year. Police responded after getting a call that she was in a disturbance. DPD says officers requested an ambulance to evaluate Ross, but officers took her into custody for outstanding city warrants after paramedics said Ross was fine and could be transported. But when they arrived at the city's detention facility, Ross appeared unresponsive as they placed her into a wheelchair. No word if she was breathing at that point. But after a detention officer tried to determine that, she called paramedics, who arrived 4 minutes later, performed CPR, then transported her to the hospital where she died. Ross's mother says officers should not have taken her into detention.
She should have went straight to the hospital.
After investigating, DPD gave a written reprimand to one of the officers, Senior Corporal Larry Moody, after he failed to provide medical treatment for Ross. Her niece wishes he acted sooner.
She would still be here.
What we're seeing here is a gross cover-up from top to bottom.
Diamond Ross's family wants answers and action.
What we're calling for is for the termination of each and every officer that was involved in that situation.
Ross's family says they couldn't believe what they saw in videos released by Dallas police.
What we saw in that video was garish. It was ugly. It was disgusting.
Police were called to a domestic disturbance in August 2018. According to police, Ross struggled with officers before being arrested on outstanding warrants. While at the scene, you can hear Ross begging for water and saying she can't breathe.
I can't breathe, sir.
WFAA also obtained the tape of officers taking Ross to the city detention center. The video is graphic and hard to watch. But you can hear Senior Corporal Larry Moody tell a rookie officer never to put handcuffs on a suspect who is resisting. Instead, he says, wear them out. That is not what officers are trained to do. Moody is also one of the officers in videos who drags the unconscious Ross into a holding cell. She is alive, but dies the next day at Baylor. Corporal Moody is first in line to be promoted to sergeant. He was given only a written reprimand for his actions. Sources say some of his superior officers wanted to suspend him for up to 30 days.
Month after month, issue after issue, there's always a cover-up when it comes to the Dallas Police Department.
Dallas police released the videotapes to all of the media, claiming they wanted to be transparent. But WFAA has been requesting them for months.
It's absolutely laughable that they issued these videos for transparency. They issued these videos to cover their butts.
The family says they want an independent review of not just their case, but the entire Dallas Police Department and its leaders.
Now, the police said they got a call about a disturbance. And when they got there, they ended up calling the paramedics to come check out this sister, Diamond Ross. But the paramedics said she was fine. So then the police said they were going to arrest her because she had outstanding warrants. Now, even though the paramedics just checked her out, you could see on the video that she was in the backseat pleading for help and asking even just for a cup of water. But the police ignored her. So then by the time she got to the detention center, she was already out of it and unresponsive. So they pulled her out of the car, dragged her limp body into the building, and dragged her into the cell. Now, it looked like she wasn't even breathing then, and she may have died already. But then at that point, they threw her lifeless body into a wheelchair, and you could see her head snap back. And then finally, one of the detention officers called for paramedics. And when they came, they tried to do CPR, but it was already too late. And then for a long time after the sister died in their custody, they went and released the video. But then after all of the pressure they've been under, they had no other choice but to release it.
A woman died from an overdose while in police custody. We requested records relating to her death 4 months ago. But just yesterday, Dallas PD released the entirety of those records to all media in the name of transparency. City officials say no one else asked for them, but we did, because what you're about to see is disturbing, and it's the reason the victim's family says officers involved should face harsher consequences. Here's Alex Rozier.
Nobody should be treated like that. Nobody.
Water.
She wasn't no threat to them.
More than a year after Diamond Ross's death, her mom and niece saw this video for the first time.
You see how she's just laying in there?
They haven't slept since.
I spent a whole year not knowing anything. Nobody came to me, talked to me, nothing.
In August 2018, DPD responded to a disturbance on Exeter Avenue in South Dallas. Police say Ross was involved in the disturbance, but they arrested her for outstanding warrants.
What city are you in right now?
While in police custody, she died of an overdose.
Now, what do I do with this?
Video is graphic. It shows police throwing her in the back of a car while she begged for water.
Water. Water.
This was her arrival at jail. She's unconscious here, pronounced dead the next day.
And then once they put her in that wheelchair, you see that? You see the way it just plopped her down in that chair? That's disrespectful.
As a result of this case, one officer received a written reprimand. Another took a new job while under investigation. DPD says they failed to provide Ross with a seatbelt, and they didn't get her medical help when she was unresponsive.
Like she was less than a human.
Family remembers Ross for her vibrant personality and kind heart.
She had a personality that everybody loved.
She would give you the shirt that she had on.
That's why they are saddened that this giving woman was taken so soon.
I was crushed.
With no help from police.
My heart was crushed.
So now, of course, the police want to be transparent. And of course, the only cop that got in trouble was the black cop. Now, he was just reprimanded, not demoted or anything, not fined, not even given a paid vacation, just reprimanded. But he was the only one that did get in trouble. But like the black police chief said on that movie Crash, how do you think I got in the position I'm in a racist organization like the police? In this case, the Dallas police. And now because they labeled this woman's death an accident, nobody has to pay for how they treated her, for not giving her medical attention, for not even giving her a cup of water. Nobody has to pay for that. During slavery, they didn't even make this many excuses when it came to harming us, because back then, we were considered a white person's property. Even back then, when a paddy roller or slave catcher caught a runaway slave, they had to make sure they didn't kill him, or they would have had to face consequences and pay restitution. But since you don't have to pay restitution to a white person, or a white person doesn't have us insured, they can get away with saying, well, their death was an accident. In Tennessee, a brother, Jalen Johnson Milan, was shot by some bounty hunters while he was at Walmart with 3 of his friends. So let's see how this brother ended up getting shot and killed while he was at Walmart.
Grand jury has indicted these seven men with murder in Clarksville. This all comes after an innocent man lost his life at the hands of bail bondsmen and bounty hunters. News Channel 5's Kimberly Davis has been following this story and has the latest on the charges from Clarksville.
The family of Jalen Johnson is feeling some relief tonight after the men responsible for taking the life of that young father of 3 have been arrested and are facing multiple charges, including first-degree felony murder.
The thing is they have to follow the same guidelines as anyone else when it comes to using deadly force.
A Montgomery grand jury decided that several bail bondsmen and bounty hunters did not follow the proper guidelines before using deadly force to take the life of 24-year-old Jalen Johnson.
We found nothing to show that the men that were in the vehicle had any sort of firearms or that they shot at these individuals at all.
These 7 men with Kesey bonding have been indicted on 16 charges, including first-degree felony murder, attempted second-degree murder, and especially aggravated kidnapping.
When these guys were in the car, no one in that car had any warrants on them, or there was no reason for them to try to take them from that vehicle. So in turn, they essentially were being held against their will at that time.
This is the man the men thought they found, William Ellis, when they shot and killed the young Clarksville father. Now 3 children are forced to grow up without the one person they call dad. And because of that, police are happy their hard work paid off.
You can see the end result. We got the indictments that we were hoping for.
Clarksville police tell us this was an exhausting investigation, especially when they were processing so many crime scenes, and not everyone involved in the investigation was cooperating. For now in Clarksville, I'm Kimberly Davis, News Channel 5.
The man the bail bondsmen were searching for is still on the run. Those men are each being held on a $300,000 bond.
Now, these 4 brothers were just at Walmart, unarmed, about to leave, when a group of bail bondsmen pulled up on them out of nowhere. They had set up a fake drug deal to try to catch somebody, and when they saw a car with 4 black males in it, they just ran up on it and smashed the windows out. And so thinking they were being attacked, the driver just pulled off. So then these bounty hunters just started shooting at the car. And when they shot at the car, they ended up shooting his brother Jalen Milan twice, once in the back and once in the chest. And they shot the driver in his neck too, but he survived. But then these bounty hunters ended up chasing these brothers for several miles while still shooting at them the whole time they were chasing them. At least one of them tried to ram their car into these brothers' car and run them off the road. And then after all of that, it turns out these patty rollers were chasing the wrong people. Nobody in that car did anything wrong. They didn't have any warrants. They didn't have a gun. They didn't shoot back one time. All they did was pull off when people ran up on them and broke their window. And initially, 7 bounty hunters were charged, adding up to 16 charges, including murder. But after a 3-week trial, the court found them all not guilty. And only one of them, of course one of the black ones, was convicted of reckless endangerment. Probably for ramming his car into the other car like it was an action movie. But they said this brother's death was an accident, because to them, that makes it justified. Us being killed by accident is justified. Meanwhile, in anything else, if somebody accidentally ends up dead, you could still be punished. But at the end of the day, while we're still trying to participate in the system and change the system instead of destroy the system, then it's going to keep happening. Because the system is meant to destroy us and is working just like it's supposed to. At the end of the day, we are all we got. And until we have faith in each other and we start trusting each other, then the same things are going to happen over and over and over again.
Oh, I got him on camera. I got him on camera. I got it. You in handcuffs, I got him on camera though. Don't worry about it. I got you to him. I already had it on camera. I seen it.
I'm getting charged. I'm getting charged. Take my truck. Take my truck. Man, give me the truck. You know you wrong. You know.
You choking him? You choking him? 2 hands?
You know him in my nuts. Oh, that's what he did.
You know he's drunk.
If I want to come, boy, take my nuts.
You know he drunk. You know he drunk. It's the same way you handle somebody drunk. I mean, I got common sense for that. That's all you gotta do is put him in the car, shut the door. That's all you had to do. That's all.
Motherfucker strong. All right, put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back now. Put your hands behind your back.
LMPD fired the officer who tased that woman, with the chief of police saying the public needed to be protected from him.
But the department didn't do the one thing that would have stopped him from carrying a badge and a gun somewhere else in the state. We go back to WDRB's Gilbert Corsi now, who filed this report earlier today.
There is major scrutiny with how LMPD handled Gregory Satterley's case. It took more than 2 years for police to fire him. He was never suspended, never pulled off the street for the investigation. And in that time, there were at least 2 other victims of his excessive force.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back now. Put your hands behind your back.
A couple outside a relative's home looking for their children, apparently involved in a custody dispute. Nyshawn Beckham wrestled to the ground and eventually tased. Her husband's head slammed to the pavement. All at the hand of LMPD officer Gregory Satterley.
Why these officers, such as Officer Satterley, are not being charged with crimes.
David Johnson represented the Beckhams. Prosecutors dropped all charges, and the city paid the couple a $50,000 settlement to avoid a lawsuit for wrongful arrest and excessive force.
But what does surprise me is how this officer still had a job after the initial encounter with my client.
In fact, nothing happened to Satterley as the case was reviewed internally by LMPD. He was never pulled off the street, and records show over the next year, he used excessive force at least 2 more times.
He's clearly acting out of anger.
30 months after this tasing, with 3 excessive force complaints sustained against him, LMPD fired Gregory Satterley in April of 2019. Chief Steve Conrad wrote in his termination letter, "I believe our community needs to be protected from you."
Get on the ground now!
But Conrad did not do the one thing that would have stopped him from getting another policing job in the state, and that's going after his Peace Officer Professional Standards, or POPS, certification. Every officer needs it to work in law enforcement in the Commonwealth, and the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council can revoke that certification when an officer has egregiously abused their power or broken the law. LMPD never reported Satterley to the state. Quote, "At the time of former officer Gregory Satterley's termination, there was no statutory regulation to take any action regarding his POP certification," a spokesman said. That statute changed in June.
It was changed because we just had rogue police officers that were bouncing from one agency to another that were allowed to police and didn't need to be policing in our communities.
House Bill 191 now requires police agencies to report terminations to KLEC for misconduct, and perhaps more importantly, officers who resign or retire in the middle of an investigation. Previously, an officer leaving amid internal review stopped that investigation.
So the policing community itself got together and said, we've had enough. Let's change this so we can get rid of those folks and clean up our profession a little bit.
Satterley's firing weeks before this new law took effect left no blemish on his POP certification.
He's completely able to move to another state and get another job. No, he should never be an officer. He should never been an officer after the case with my client. And, you know, I think that Chief Conrad should answer for this.
We asked LMPD repeatedly for an interview, why it took so long to act on Satterley and why he was never pulled off the street. We were never given an answer.
Hate crime charges have now been filed in a disturbing incident at Naperville Central High School.
WGN's Patrick Elwood is live in Naperville with an update from the victim's mother tonight. Patrick.
Lourdes and Joe, good evening to you. The matter has gone beyond investigation to now that 14-year-old appearing before a DuPage County judge to face formal charges. That said, WGN just heard from the alleged victim's mother, who tells us, quote, "They used to be friends. They are not anymore. The moment he started teasing my son, calling him dumb, making fun of his skin color, saying, 'Shut up, slave,' last October, they were not friends anymore," unquote.
It goes back to home, to the parenting. It needs to be installed in their children. They should not believe in racism. Racism is it's to me it's like the devil.
That's Naperville resident Bobby Billups, who says he drives kids to and from Naperville Central as a job. He is reacting to the hate crime charges filed today against a 14-year-old Central High School student who allegedly posted a photo of a black student with the caption, "Slave for sale," on Craigslist. The 14-year-old, who is white, is charged with 2 counts of committing a hate crime and 1 count of disorderly conduct. He appeared in court today with his parents but did not speak during that hearing. The school's principal sent an email home Monday saying administrators became aware of a racially insensitive electronic post and worked as quickly as possible to investigate and address the matter with students involved. It was then turned over to the Naperville Police Department to investigate. Today, Chief Robert Marshall calls the matter despicable. The ad follows an October 26th incident at a Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant in Naperville, in which some customers said they were asked by restaurant employees to change tables because a regular customer nearby didn't want to sit next to black people. The restaurant fired the 2 employees involved. The chief believes these 2 are isolated incidents.
When I first saw it, my immediate reaction was, this is despicable and offensive, and no student or family should ever have to go through this type of harassment. That these were 2 isolated incidents, and I don't want to minimize the seriousness of either one of them. However, there are thousands of interactions among the members of our community on a daily basis, which are respectful and dignified.
DuPage County State's Attorney Robert Berlin has this to say about the charges, quote, "The allegations against the juvenile in this case are beyond disturbing. Hate crimes have no place in our society and will not be tolerated in DuPage County. Anyone, regardless of age, accused of such disgraceful actions will be charged accordingly." The teen in question here is due back in court in December.
Piper girls volleyball team reported Baldwin City students making monkey noises and telling the African-American students to go back where they came from during a volleyball game in Baldwin City on October 8th. Well, the Baldwin City Board of Education ordered an independent investigation into the allegations of racism, and this is what it concluded.
They could not find any evidence to say that happened.
That is the conclusion of an independent investigation into racism conducted by the Kansas Association of School Boards, requested by the Baldwin City Board of Education. The investigator concluding Piper volleyball players heard crowd noise and interpreted it as racially charged.
I think it's unfortunate that this occurred. I believe that we'll use it as a lesson to learn from, that people interpret and see things differently. And because of that, occasionally allegations like this can occur.
Just disgusted and saddened by it.
Candace Byers' daughters were 2 of the volleyball players at Baldwin City High School that night. She says the investigation is flawed.
What matters is my daughters came home and how upset they were, how distraught they were, and the other girls as well. And even the coach heard it. I talked to her about it, and she was in disbelief of what she heard.
According to the Baldwin City Board of Education, 49 witnesses were involved in the investigation. In a statement, Piper School Interim Superintendent Dr. Blaine McCann says, although players, coaches, and administrators were available, investigators spoke to only 3 witnesses from Piper. I stand with the students of Piper and support their version of events and feel enough is enough. As a society, we can no longer allow people to make excuses for unacceptable behavior that is disrespectful and dismissive of certain groups. Can we get a copy of this report?
That came from the attorney to our board, and in his attorney-client privilege, we're not going to release that report.
Aren't you the client? So you could release it?
I can't.
Okay.
Our board would have to determine if they want to release that.
So we made that request, and President of the Baldwin City Board of Education, Nick Harris, rejected it, saying due to attorney-client privilege, the report will not be released.
I understand the report doesn't come out exactly how they may have wanted to see it, but at the same time, I think we need to move on and be better for everything that we've done here.
We have been in touch with and reached out to several Baldwin City parents, but none of them would agree to an on-camera interview for this story.
Teachers' phones sparked outrage in the community. Parents and students showing up at the school to protest. Brantley Weatherford has been following this story and is live in studio with more. Good evening, Brantley.
Good evening, Paige. Students and parents weren't the only ones that's upset about the messages. I talked to some local residents and they were also not happy about it. The students at Ashford High School were furious Thursday after text messages from a group chat of Ashford teachers was leaked. In the messages, the teachers talked about students' sex lives and called some students the N-word.
One teacher even called a former student named Preon Snell a racial slur in the text message. We spoke to Preon and his aunt at the school. Here's what they had to say.
They racist. All of these folks racist.
That goes to show that every time when he was letting them know that they was being racist to him, that it was true when the principal was saying that it wasn't. It had to be true for you to put this in a group chat. My message to y'all, a lot of y'all need to clean houses, start with these teachers, and get rid of them.
Houston County Superintendent David Sewell announced today that several of the teachers will be put on administrative leave on Monday. For some, though, that isn't enough.
They need to be gone as of today. We don't need to wait on this right here. What are we waiting for? And just remember, we didn't get them in trouble. We did not get them in trouble. They got them in trouble. They just been exposed to what they have done, and something need to be done about it.
As for the students, the damage has already been done, and one student says any trust they had for the teachers is now gone.
If someone comes to the school doing something that they don't have no business doing, you know, the teacher might think in her head, well, I'm not going to protect this student the way I'm going to protect this one. So that's the way it really makes you feel about this. So it's a big slap in the face.
It reads, "Welcome home, Illini." But a warm welcome is not the case for some students, after officers say a noose was found hanging in an elevator in Allen Hall at the University of Illinois.
That actually just scared me away from the university.
Monday night, officers arrested a U of I student, 19-year-old Andrew Smith, for hanging the noose. Now Smith is facing multiple charges, including a hate crime. Now the advocacy group Black Students for Revolution is calling on the university.
We want the expulsion of those who are involved with the incident, 2 years minimum or more. We also want we want access to regular investigations and information on racist incidents on this campus. You know, they try to, again, that covering up, that denial.
Students say hate crimes are not just present on the U of I campus.
This happens a lot. You know, this is not just on the university, on this university, this is across the nation.
On Tuesday, the U of I spokesperson released a statement saying, in part, the university does not condone acts of intolerance, bias, or prejudice.
Racist messages, including a picture of a burning cross, have sparked an investigation at UW-Eau Claire and led to 5 players being suspended from their football team.
Our own Katrina Lim spoke with the chancellor and the targeted group to learn what comes next.
I am disgusted by the actions of some of these students. There's no place for that here.
The Chancellor's office says several football players are suspended from the team for allegedly writing these racist messages targeting members of the Black Male Empowerment Group.
Very derogatory, very unacceptable. There should be no tolerance like that in this field whatsoever.
The messages allegedly show several football players joking about hosting a white male empowerment meeting, posting a picture of the KKK burning a cross.
Whether it was in a smaller private group or not, it does not matter. This is inappropriate. It is not part of our conduct.
Student leaders claim incidents of racism are not uncommon on campus. In September, student Katie Langer claimed she found this message outside her dorm room in North Hall.
Honestly, not at all. Every day, it almost feels like there's a racist incident every day.
Other students fear these messages could be a gateway to a more escalated situation on campus, even violence.
I think it starts with words, and then later on, I feel like people are gonna start harming people of color.
Since Black students are already less than 1% of the campus, it's already hard enough to get recognition, and for them to be the group that is attacked or targeted is just really frustrating.
Balaam says this incident won't deter BME from continuing to promote positivity on campus, but he does feel that actions should have consequences.
We want justice. And by justice, I don't mean strikes and and going on all these boycotts and stuff. I mean, actions from the faculty, the administration. It shouldn't be slaps on the wrist. There should be hardcore punishments.
Now, News 18 did reach out to some of the students suspected to have sent the messages but have not heard back.
As of today, I'd like to officially announce that I quit in WWE.
This is formerly Jordan Miles, formerly of the WWE.
I am no longer an employee. I refuse to work for racists. I quit them.
And he's enraged, so he's taking action.
I hate that company and everything they stand for. All they did was ever hold our people back. I do this for the culture. I don't need anyone's permission to do what I want to do. Screw Jordan Miles. Don't ever call me by that slave name. Call me ACH, and don't forget the super bitch. I quit.
We have covered ACH's story. He tweeted, "They'll regret making this. #ForTheCulture," displaying a shirt with racial undertones. Prior to deleting his Twitter account, ACH retweeted this image, drawing parallels between the shirt WWE marketed and blackface. As outlined previously, Vince McMahon, the company's CEO, controls everything.
Probably one of my biggest challenges is actually managing my father.
WWE's chief brand officer, Stephanie McMahon, daughter of Vince.
But he is the ultimate creative say.
Which is very telling.
In March, E60's television cameras were the first ever granted access to a WWE production meeting.
And just to note that a lot of the guys don't know what's happening yet, so they will probably by next week.
A man with full control writes in himself saying the N-word on national television. A man with full say okays the idea of Gold Dust wearing blackface, a fake afro on his head, and a boombox. McMahon, judge, jury, and executioner, allowed Triple H, his daughter Stephanie's husband, along with D Generation X, to also wear blackface.
We understand the game. We see what the game is, that people like us will only get so far.
McMahon, the CEO, who okays and rewrites scripts, wanted Rowdy Roddy Piper dressed in half blackface to get under the skin of an African-American wrestler.
I refuse to work for racists.
Hulk Hogan was the star of WWE.
I mean, I am a racist to a point. But then when it comes to nice people and whatever, then says, I mean, I'd rather, if she was going to some, I'd rather have her marry an 8-foot tall worth $100 million, like a basketball player. Guess we're all a little racist.
After Hogan was caught dropping the N-word, Big E tweeted, "Appropriate a culture, pilfer from its dialect, profit wildly from it, and regard its people as subhuman." Makes sense. Hogan was welcomed back by WWE on Raw in September. A former WWE Women's Champ called WWE racist, saying they discard bigoted people because they have the same thoughts, and sniping at detractors sarcastically, tweeting, "Oh, okay, because they hire people of ethnicity doesn't mean they aren't racist. It's business number one. Two, you don't know anything about what happens backstage." Like Michael Hayes, who attacked Mark Henry, saying, "I'm more of an N-word than you are." Henry later complained to WWE management, and Hayes was slapped with the suspension. He was retained as head creative writer. Hayes also took aim at Barack Obama, saying, "How can we have a president that can't read the Constitution? And if that boy gets elected, I'm moving to Canada." And it bleeds in arenas. Triple H said to Booker T on air, "The fact is, Booker, somebody like you doesn't get to be a world champ. People like you don't deserve it. That's reserved for people like me. Then, you're here to be an entertainer. Go ahead and do a little dance for me. Go ahead. Give me one of those spinneroonies. You're here to make people like me laugh with your nappy hair and your suckas." Some may point towards the money and fame that come with WWE employment.
You might reasonably think that the wrestlers employed by him are his employees. They're actually not. They're merely independent contractors.
But employees aren't protected because, in closing, as Kurt Flood would say,
"For a man who makes $90,000 a year, which isn't exactly slave wages, what's your retort to that?"
A well-paid slave is nonetheless a slave.
An American singer's battle with Qantas has taken a turn. The Australian pop duo The Veronicas today claiming the same flight attendant was involved in their clash with the airline in September. Qantas has denied the latest twist as will.i.am boarded a flight out of the country.
The soundtrack was on mute when R&B star will.i.am left Australia this morning.
Well, can you tell us what happened on the flight yesterday?
The performer on pause over his allegation he and his entourage were subjected to an aggressive and racially based encounter with a Qantas flight steward from Brisbane to Sydney.
Will you be flying with Qantas again? He's not going to answer you.
But yesterday, through the loud hailer of Twitter to his nearly 13 million followers, the US artist fired off 2 hits over his alleged treatment by Qantas staff, which resulted in the flight being met by federal police. Qantas has explicitly rejected the claims of racism, saying it was a misunderstanding, exacerbated by the performer wearing noise-cancelling headphones, leaving him unable to hear crew instructions. But before leaving Sydney today, on an Air New Zealand flight, the American star added another verse in a newspaper interview.
I know how to behave on an airplane. I've never had this experience before. She's going to lose her job over it. If anything, she should just be retrained on how to deal with people.
Police say they are not pursuing the matter, while Qantas this afternoon also denied the same flight attendant was involved in both incidents.
Managers at a downtown Phoenix restaurant are standing their ground tonight despite protests and even death threats after they decided not to fire an employee for typing a racial slur on an order ticket. We first brought you this story yesterday when we learned that a server at the Breakfast Club restaurant in downtown typed the N-word on an order. The managers wanted to use it as a teachable moment for all the employees, but protesters are saying that's not enough. The two opposing sides were at it again today and talked with Team 12's Erica Stapleton about what's next. Erica?
The managers have not wavered in their decision not to fire that employee. They believe in second chances, but say in this case there won't be a third.
It's been a long 24 hours for Breakfast Club at Cityscape in downtown Phoenix.
There's been people that have called that have been a little heated, and I understand the passion behind this.
This is all over an order ticket typed out in October with the N-word on it. The employee who typed it told managers it was meant to be a joke, but another employee saw it and reported it to management. We've learned that the man who typed the N-word started working at the restaurant 5 years ago and hasn't shown behavior like this in the past. Management didn't fire him, but did write him up and wanted to use it as an opportunity to learn.
We've chosen to not fire the individual based upon his remorse in this situation and all the parties involved in dealing with it. One of our cultural aspects here is to extend grace to those that are teachable.
But that decision is causing uproar. Yesterday, a handful of protesters took to the bar to express their concerns. Today, some of them came back to talk it out with the managers. Despite the discipline, they're still calling for termination.
I don't know of a single industry that allows you to engage in racism using the N-word and calling it a joke and still have your job.
Rakevian White is the employee who brought this to his manager's attention. He's also still working there. He says he needs the pay to get himself through school, even if it's an environment he says makes him uncomfortable.
I definitely want them to be reprimanded correctly. If that's termination, then so be it.
The restaurant says this situation with the ticket has not impacted their business today. As for next steps, managers are taking all considerations that were proposed to them, including a zero-tolerance policy, into consideration, and they're working on an employee handbook that tackles situations like these.
Hey, watch your mouth, man. Hey, you tripping, man. What the fuck wrong with you, man? Keep that in your mouth. Get that in your motherfucking self. Hey, what you tripping, motherfucker? Do you understand me? Get that in your mouth. Motherfucking nigga, bitch. Get that in your motherfucking self. Get that in your mouth. Get this in your motherfucking self, bitch. You ain't Trump. Get that in your motherfucking self. I mean that. I mean that, motherfucker. You don't go to the motherfucking self. Hey, you tripping, boy. You hear me? Don't do it. Don't do it, bitch. I'll fuck you up. I ain't up in the dirt, and I'll fuck you up. Tripping, man. Hey, watch your mouth, man. Oh my God. Like, what the fuck? I'll never say that red, but I don't give a fuck who you serve, bitch. I will fuck your life up. Boy, you tripping, never say that goddamn word again. Boy, you tripping, what? Boy, you tripping. I don't pay that shit. Oh, you tripping. You ain't Trump. Y'all motherfuckers gonna die, bitches. Y'all motherfuckers dinosaurs, bitch. You gotta go. Hey, all you white people, this is what happens when you say nigga. Don't fucking say nigga, you hear me? Get your ass slapped the fuck up. Y'all tripping, man. Well, your ass. Yes, sir. Fuck wrong with you, man.